Hello? 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 Am I on? Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Am I on? I think I am. What's up, guys? Hello. What's up, Shane H? Why did you just say tanuki balls? What's up, Patrick? Hey, Dee. What's up, Manny? Hey, Hope. Nice of you to join. Yandere. Hello. Good evening. Good evening to you. What's up, Bigfoot? Nice of you to join. Hey, Nikki. What's up? Simply starstruck. Good morning. What's up, Jamie? What's good on my end? Oh, wait. Are you asking me? I'm doing very well. Oh my god, I talked to my cousin the other day. She is so bad at personal financing. Like, she doesn't save money. I don't know why they don't teach this stuff in school. They gotta teach like personal financing. Like, I wish I can teach like, I don't know, a personal finance 101. Like a little video about that. Now, guys, if you have a bunch of money in your savings account, you're doing it wrong. Okay, you gotta put that money in the stock market. Okay, in some safe index fund and let your money grow. Right? Yeah, I mean, like they should really teach this stuff at school. I don't know why they don't. But anyways, well, if you don't have any money and you don't have, and that's why you don't have money in savings, then and I'm sorry, I feel bad. I hope you have more money. What's up, Laris? What's in the cup? It's just water. I just got water. Yeah, they should teach. They need to teach like an adult class, like how to be an adult. You know, like a 1 semester or something in high school. Like teach you the basics. You know, like how to save money, how to change a tire, how to do your taxes. You know, the stuff that a normal adult does. I think like that would be a super helpful class to have. You know what I mean? Like I think everyone would benefit from that class. I wish I knew how to I wish I learned how to do my taxes in high school. That would have been great. Yeah, well, if you don't have money then yeah, then you can't save. I got you. Yeah, how to adult. How to be an adult. At your high school they did? What did they teach you in that class in high school? Cuz I didn't get any of that. Cooking? I had cooking. I had like a home economics class in middle school or something. Yeah. I guess that is cooking. Yeah, how to check your oil. They don't teach you that because they want you to be dependent on money or your employer for everything. Is that why? Oh, I feel like anyone would benefit from that class. Every time you try to change, I've had to change my tires a couple of times in my life. I changed my tires or other people's tires because they don't know how to do it. Yeah, and it's super easy. Half of the semester was econ and money, half was life skills. Gotcha. You want that cup? Oh, my Game of Thrones cup. It also has my clan on it. My house. House Stark. That's right. Yeah. How to invest your money. That's a great class. All right. Guess what I have today? Ooh. It's Jello. Look at that. So my mom made this. Yeah, I visited my mom like yesterday. Yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. And she made this. This is Jello. Okay. I love the way it squiggles and jiggles like a booba, but it's really good. I don't know what it's. I don't know what how she makes it. I think this part is milk or something. It has milk. Yeah, but it's really good. Hmm. I give it a 10 out of 10. Thanks, Mom. You have the same plate? Hmm. Is this the generic Asian plate? Hmm. What flavor Jello? I don't even know what flavor. It's just sweet. It's just sugary. Oh, you're right. This is not milk then. This layer, the top layer is not milk. It's coconut milk, I think. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I have the best parent, moms. I have the best mom. I do have the best mom. I really like my mom. I'm very fond of my mom. The green part is just agar, right? Is that how you make these? It's agar. I think that's what you call it. Hmm. Wait, give me a few seconds while I enjoy this. Pandan? I don't think it's pandan. I don't know what it is. It's just sweet. Am I going to share? Oh, send me your address and I'll send it to you. I'll send the yellow to you, okay? Your mom makes her jello Vietnamese style. This is Vietnamese style, right? Is this what it is? It's not the normal, like, really jiggly jello, like American jello. Yeah, it's the Vietnamese kind or Asian kind. I don't know. I think my mom should make a YouTube channel where she just cooks. I think it'll do really well. She's a really good cook. Like, she knows a lot of shit. Yeah, I can run it. I can run the channel and I'll take like half of the revenue from the channel. How about that? Hey, she's she's retired. Okay, she doesn't need the money. I need the money. I don't think the green part is pandan. It doesn't taste like it, but it tastes really good. I don't know. All right. All moms are great at cooking. Yeah, I don't think so. There. I have a few aunts who are not that great at cooking, not gonna lie. I hope they're not watching. All right. I think we can get started, right? Linfamy's mom's cooking channel. Yeah. All right, let's get started. Okay. So what happened last week? All right, last week, our hero Ling Hu Chong, he goes, him and the Hangshan school, they go to the Songshan school, right, where they're holding the ceremony to choose the next leader of the five schools, right? Now their goal in going is to stop the chief Zhuo Langchan from merging the schools and making himself the leader, right? Now, so during the meeting, Zhuo Langchan declares that he wants to merge the five sword schools into one, right? And during the meeting, Mr. Moda, who is the leader of the other Hangshan school, he objects to the merger, right? He says no. But Chief Zuo, he reveals that he knew that Mr. Moda had killed Fei Bin, who was a guy from his Songshan school, a long time ago, at the very beginning of the story. And he threatened to tell that secret and make it a big deal, right? But so Mr. Moda had to shut his mouth and agree to the merger. The next is the leader of the Taishan school, who also objects. Okay? He's Priest Tianmen. He objects. He doesn't want his school to end. He doesn't want his school to end after 300 years of existence, right? But suddenly, his martial uncle, this guy named Yu Jizi, from the same school, he speaks up and he calls Priest Tianmen selfish for not wanting the merger, and it looks like there's some conflict in the Taishan school. All right, that's it. Yeah, that's basically what happened. Are my aunts also moms? Yeah. I have some aunts who are also moms, and they don't know how to cook that well. I'm not gonna lie. All right. Let's switch to the live screen. Okay, so this Yujizu guy, remember, let's see. So the Yujizu guy, who's a martial uncle of the leader of the Taishan school, he objects, right? He goes, martial uncle, what do you mean by... Wait. The priest Tianmen goes, martial uncle, what do you mean by that? Ever since martial nephew became the headmaster of the Taishan, which matter have I done which is not in the best interest? So he's arguing with his martial uncle about the merger. All right. Chapter 32, School Merger, Part 2. Yujizu laughed condescendingly and said, the merger of the 5 schools will greatly flourish the 5 mountain schools. Which disciples in the 5 mountain schools wouldn't benefit from this merger? Martial nephew, you can't be the headmaster of our school anymore. Priest Tianmen got even more indignant when he heard of this. He shouted, what's this got to do with me being the headmaster? No matter what anyone said, the Taishan school will not be annexed while I'm in charge. Yujizu said, what you said is really beautiful, but inside your heart, you actually don't want to relinquish your position of headmaster. Priest Tianmen indignantly said, you really think that I'm that selfish? He extended his hand and took out a black dagger from his bosom. He then shouted, from now on, I'm no longer the headmaster. If you want to be the headmaster, then come and do it. Everyone saw that this black dagger looked ordinary, but all the seniors of the 5 mountain sword schools knew that it was a relic from the time when Priest Dongling started the Taishan school. This dagger had become the symbol of the Taishan school's headmaster and had been passed down from headmaster to headmaster for the last 300 years. Yujizu retreated a step and coldly laughed. Oh, you're willing to part with it? Priest Tianmen angrily replied, why wouldn't I be willing to part with it? All right, then give it to me. As he said this, he extended his right hand and grabbed the dagger in Priest Tianmen's hand. Priest Tianmen didn't expect that Yujizu would actually grab the dagger, so as he was startled, the dagger was already snatched by Yujizu. Without thinking too much, he pulled out the longsword hanging on his waist. Yujizu flew back, and 2 green blurs were seen as 2 old priests blocked Priest Tianmen's way with their swords. They shouted, Tianmen, you're defying your senior. Have you forgotten our school's commandment? Priest Tianmen saw that these two people were his martial uncles, Yu Qingzi and Yu Yinzi. His whole body shivered as he called out, "Martial uncles! You saw it with your own eyes! Yuji, what martial uncle Yuji did just a moment ago." Yu Yinzi said, "We've seen it with our own eyes. You gave the school's headmaster position to martial brother Yuji. Abdicating your position to someone more worthy is a very good thing to do." Yu Qingzi said, "Since martial brother Yuji is your martial uncle, who is now also your headmaster, you've committed a very big sin by pulling out your sword to kill him." Priest Tianmen saw that his two martial uncles were being unreasonably favorable towards Yu Jizi, and were also unexpectedly finding faults with what he did. In an uncontrollable rage, he shouted, "I only said that in anger. How could the headmaster position be passed down so quickly? Damn it, I would never have passed it down to Yuji." In his fit of anger, he unexpectedly said some foul language. Yu Yinzi shouted, "Are you fit to be the headmaster after saying such kind of language?" From amongst the Taishan school's group, a middle-aged priest stood up and said loudly, "Our school's headmaster has always been my master. What kind of tricks are martial uncles playing here?" This middle-aged priest had a Taoist name of Qian Chu, and he was Priest Tianmen's second disciple. This was followed by another person who stood up and shouted, "Martial Uncle Tianmen already gave the headmaster position to my master. The thousands of people on top of Mount Sangshan here saw and heard what happened. How could it be false? Martial brother Tianmen said just a moment ago, 'From now on, I'm no longer the headmaster. If you want to be the headmaster, then come and do it. You didn't hear it?' The one who said this was Yu Jizi's disciple. More than 100 people from the Taishan school's group started chanting, "Old headmaster abdicated. New headmaster takes over. Old headmaster abdicated. New headmaster takes over." Priest Tianmen was the most senior disciple, and he also had the most reputation in the school. But 5 or 6 of his martial uncles secretly plotted against him, and suddenly went against him together. So from the 200 Taishan school people who had come up to Mount Songshan today, more than 160 of them were his enemy. Yu Jizi lifted the iron dagger high above his head and said, "This is Grandmaster Dongling's divine weapon." Grandmaster's last words were, "Seeing this dagger is like seeing Dongling." Should we listen to Grandmaster's last word? More than 100 priests loudly shouted, "Headmaster is right." There was also people calling out, "This disciple Tianmen is rebelling and is not adhering to our school rules. He deserves to be punished." When Ling Huchong saw what was happening, he was guessing that all these people were secretly put here by Zhuo Langchan. Priest Tianmen had an irritable nature and could easily be stirred up. With just a few words, he could become extremely angry. At this moment, hearing the loud voice of his enemy, Tianmen felt he couldn't restrain himself. But even though he was extremely enraged at the moment, there was nothing he could do. Ling Huchong gazed at where Huashan School was crowded together and saw his master standing with his hands behind his back. His master's face had no expression whatsoever. Ling Huchong thought, Yu Jizi and his people set this up, and master greatly objected to this. But he doesn't want to meddle in this and seems to be just calmly observing what's going on for now. So I'll just follow his lead then. Okay, so it looks like shit is going down in the Taishan school. Oh, it's someone's birthday? Hey, happy birthday. Happy birthday, Yakin. Yu Jizi waved his left hand a few times, and suddenly around 160 priests from the Taishan school dispersed and pulled their longswords out. They encircled the remaining 50-plus priests. All the priests encircled were Tianmen's disciples. Priest Tianmen indignantly bellowed, "You really want to fight? Then let's fight to the death." Yu Jizi said clearly, "Tianmen, listen. Taishan School's Tianmen, listen. Taishan School's headmaster has an order. Drop your sword and surrender. Do you submit to Grand Master Dongling's dagger?" Tianmen angrily replied, "Puh! Who said you're our school's headmaster?" "Tianmen's disciples, this matter has nothing to do with you. Throw down your weapons and surrender yourself. We won't look into this matter further, otherwise you'll be punished heavily," Yu Jizi called out. Priest Chanchu shouted, "If you can promise to Grand Master's dagger that you would never let the hard work of Grand Master in establishing the Taishan School be wiped out, then all of us will support you in becoming headmaster. But if once you've become the headmaster, you immediately sell our school to the Songshan School, then you'll become the greatest sinner. And when you die, you won't have face to meet with the Grand Master." Yu Yinzi said, "You little kid, do you think you're good enough to talk to your seniors from the Yu generation? When the 5 schools merge, wouldn't Songshan School's name also be wiped out? 5 Mountains School. These 2 words of 5 mountains include Taishan in it. What's not good about that?" Priest Tianmen replied, "You were all secretly sowing discord and have all been bought by Zhu Langshan. If you want to kill, then go ahead. But if you want me to promise to surrender to Songshan, I will never do it." Yu Jizi said, "You're all refusing to obey the headmaster's dagger. Careful, you'll die shortly, and you will die unburied." Priest Tianmen said, "Disciples loyal to Taishan School, today we'll die fighting and spill our blood on Songshan." The disciples standing around him answered, "We'll fight to the death, and we'll never surrender." Even though their numbers were small, each of their faces showed their resolve. If Yu Jizi told his men to attack, it wasn't going to be quick in killing all of them. Also, the thousands of good heroes, Shaolin School's Great Master Feng Zhang, Wudang School's Priest Chongshu, and the other senior masters around the base of the worship place would never allow them to take advantage of this and allow the massacre of their own martial brothers to happen. Yu Jizi, Yu Qingzi, Yu Yinzi, and their men were watching carefully, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, someone from far to the left lazily said, "Old man has walked everywhere in this realm. I've also seen a lot of good heroes, but I rarely see a dog who disclaims what he says immediately after he's said it." Everyone looked at where the voice was coming from, and they saw a person wearing hemp clothes, leaning beside a big rock. His left hand was holding a big bamboo hat, and he was using it to fan himself. This person looked slim, his 2 eyes were squinted, and his face was showing a disapproving expression. No one knew who this person was, and they also didn't know who he was scolding. They heard him continue, "You clearly already gave your headmaster position to someone else. Could it be what you were saying was bullshit? Priest Tianmen, your name has this character, Tian. I'm afraid we should change it to the word shit. Then it'll sound right." Tian is like an immortal, or like a deity. Yu Jizi and his men understood that he was helping them, so they all laughed. Tianmen indignantly said, "It's my own Taishan School's matter. Outsiders don't need to worry about it." That hemp-clothed man lazily replied, "When an old man sees a matter that's not pleasing to my eyes, then I'll definitely worry about it. Today is the 5 Mountains Sword School's good day for a merger. But instead, you, ox-nosed priest, pulled out your sword and created trouble here, making people lose interest. This is really bullshit." Suddenly, they saw a flash as that hemp-clothed man jumped forward and rapidly charged at the encirclement of Yu Jizi and his men. He slashed the bamboo hat he was holding in his left hand down on Priest Tianmen's head. Unexpectedly, Priest Tianmen didn't block this strike. Instead, he pointed his sword towards that person's chest, who then hastily dropped down to the ground and rushed underneath Priest Tianmen's legs. He slapped his right hand on the ground to turn his body around. Then, with a whew sound, he kicked out repeatedly at the back of Priest Tianmen's body. These few moves displayed by that person were extremely weird. Every one of the heroes gathered on the mountaintop was skilled, but they had never heard of any of these moves before, let alone seen it. Tianmen couldn't guard against this attack, and his acupoints were hit. The disciples around Tianmen immediately stabbed their swords towards that person. The man just laughed loudly and grabbed Priest Tianmen's back to block the incoming swords, which forced the disciples to withdraw their swords in a hurry. That man shouted, "Throw down your swords, or I'll twist off this ox-nosed head." As he said this, his right hand clutched the top of Priest Tianmen's head. Tianmen's martial art was useless now, as his movement was controlled by that person, and he couldn't move at all. His once red face had now turned pale. Looking at the situation, it's clear that the hemp-clothed man only had to apply some power into his right hand to twist Tianmen's head around and break his neck. Qian Chu said, "You suddenly ambushed us. This is not what heroes do. What is your name?" That person used his left hand to smack Priest Tianmen's ear and then lazily said, "Whoever is rude to me, then I'll hit his master." When Priest Tianmen's disciples saw that their honored master was being insulted, they were startled and angry at the same time. Each of them only needed to pierce their long swords towards the hemp-clothed man at the same time, and that man would instantaneously become a hedgehog. But Priest Tianmen was still under his control, so none of them dared to move for fear that their actions might hurt their master. A young man scolded, "You dog!" That man again lifted his hand and slapped Tianmen's ear. He then said, "You're a disciple from the school. How can you still say such foul language?" Suddenly, Priest Tianmen cried out loudly as he suddenly turned around and came face to face with that hemp-clothed person. Blood spouted out of Priest Tianmen's mouth. The hemp-clothed person was startled and wanted to take his hand off of the priest, but it was too late. All of a sudden, that person's whole head and face became drenched with blood from the priest, while at the same time, both of Priest Tianmen's hands turned around and grabbed his neck. With a sharp sound, that person's neck was snapped. Priest Tianmen then threw the person's body away, which landed tens of feet away. Well, didn't expect that, did you? Priest Tianmen now looked completely tall and strong, and at the same time looked strangely powerful, with his face full of blood. Everyone who saw him was terrified. After some time, he violently shouted and dropped to the ground. At first, he was unexpectedly attacked by that person who used many weird moves. Then he was repeatedly insulted, so he couldn't hold back his anger anymore and was willing to lose his life. So he exerted his inner energy and forcefully broke his meridian. By doing that, he managed to open up his sealed acupoints and then exerted himself and killed that person. But his own meridian was broken, so he wouldn't be able to live anymore as well. Tianmen's disciples cried out, "Master!" and rushed over to support him. But when they saw that he had already died, they all started scolding loudly. Oh, there goes the headmaster of the Taishan school. Hey, what's up, Lady Koi? Welcome back. From amongst the crowd, someone suddenly said, "Headmaster Zuo, you ordered that green ocean owl to deal with Priest Tianmen. Isn't that too much?" Everyone turned around to look at the person who said this. What they saw was a rustic old man who some people knew of as He San-chi, who usually went around selling wonton in the markets around the cities. As for that person who was violently killed by the priest Tianmen, no one knew who he was or where he came from. They only heard that Hu Sanchi called him as Green Ocean Owl, yet still not many people knew who Green Ocean Owl was. Zhu Langchan said, "What a joke. This is the first time that I have met Brother Qi. How can you say that I ordered him to do this?" Hu Sanchi said, "Perhaps Headmaster Zhu hasn't been acquainted with Green Ocean Owl for long, but you're well acquainted with this person's master, White Malignant Star." When the word White Malignant Star came out of Hu Sanchi's mouth, the crowd uttered their surprise. Ling Hucheng vaguely remembered that many years ago, Master Wife had mentioned this name, White Malignant Star. At that time, Yue Lingshan was only around 6 to 7 years old, and she was crying incessantly. Madame Yue tried to frighten her by saying, "If you keep crying, then White Malignant Star will come and take you away." When Ling Hucheng asked who this White Malignant Star was, Madame Yue replied, "White Malignant Star is an evil person. He likes to eat small kids who love to cry. This person has no nose, and there's only 2 holes on his face, just like a piece of board." At that time, Yue Lingshan was scared by this and stopped crying. As Ling Hucheng thought of the past, he gazed at Yue Lingshan and saw her staring at a distant mountain peak, looking as if she was pondering something. Scowling at times, she seemed to be worried about something. It was obvious that she didn't recall of this White Malignant Star, and that she had long ago forgotten about it. Ling Hucheng thought, "Little Martial's sister has just gotten married, and she loves Martial Brother Lin a lot. What unpleasant matter is she thinking of? Could it be that they're fighting at the moment?" He saw Lin Pingzhi standing beside her, and his face looked quite weird. He seemed to be smiling, and yet not smiling, and he seemed to be angry, but not quite angry. Ling Hucheng was again surprised. What kind of expression is that? On whose face did I see this expression before? But he couldn't remember where he had seen this kind of expression before. He then heard Zhuo Langchan reply, "Brother Yuzhi, congratulations on becoming the Taishan School's headmaster. Regarding this 5 sword schools merger, what's brother's esteemed opinion on this?" Zhuo Langchan didn't answer. Zhuo Langchan didn't answer Hu Sanchi's question, but instead went around it. Then this meant that tacitly, he was not disputing that he knew of White Malignant Star. White Malignant Star's evil name had been known for around 20 to 30 years, but the number of people who had actually seen him or suffered under his hands was not many. It seemed that his evil reputation mainly came from his ugly appearance. However, from looking at his disciple Green Ocean Owl's behavior, it was obvious that this master and disciple didn't belong to the orthodox school. Yu Jizi grasped the dagger in his hand and was feeling proud of himself. He happily replied, "The merger of the 5 mountain sword schools benefits every one of us in the 5 schools, and there's no harm in it at all. It's only that Priest Tianmen was very selfish and didn't think of the welfare of everyone, so he went against the idea. Chief Zhuo, as I'm the headmaster of the Taishan school now, I wholeheartedly approve of the merger of the 5 schools. Everyone in Taishan is now under your command and will flourish under the 5 mountain schools' family. If anyone tried to obstruct this, then my Taishan school will be the first one to go against them." More than 100 people from Taishan boomed their answer. "Taishan school wholeheartedly agrees to the merger. If anyone absurdly objects to this, Taishan school swears to go against them." These people answered together and loudly. Even though there weren't many of them, their voices were firm and reverberated throughout the mountaintop. Ling Hucheng thought, it's obvious they've practiced this beforehand. Otherwise, even if every one of them agreed to the merger, their words wouldn't be exactly the same as each other's. Also, hearing the respectful tone that Yu Jizi used when addressing Zhuo Langchan, he guessed that if Zhuo Langchan had not secretly given him a payoff before, then Zhuo Langchan must have used some kind of violent method to control him. When Priest Tianmen's disciples saw that their master had died violently and that things were out of their control, they were forced to sit there silently. Some of them grinded their teeth and cursed silently, while a few clenched their fists as their faces filled with grief and indignation. No, so 2 schools down. His plan is going well. Zhu Langchan said loudly, Hongshan and Taishan schools have already approved of the merger, so it seems that all our schools will be merged very soon. There is only benefit for everyone in the merging of the schools. There's no harm in it. So my Songshan school will also follow your decision and celebrate this together. Ling Hucheng coldly thought in his heart, You certainly can talk very beautifully. All these matters were set up by you, but you were actually making it sound as if you're just following their ideas. He heard Zhuo Langchan continue. Among the 5 schools, 3 schools have already agreed to the merger. What does the Hangshan school think of this? Hangshan School's previous headmaster, Dingxian Shitai, had repeatedly discussed about this matter with me. She completely endorsed this merger. Dingjing, Dingyu Shitai also agreed with this. From among the black uniformed disciples of the Hangshan school, one disciple cried out in a clear voice, Headmaster Zhuo, what you said is wrong. Before our headmaster and 2 martial uncles passed away, they hated this idea of a merger and completely opposed it. As a result of opposing it, the 3 honorables met their misfortunes. How can you pass off your own opinion as that of the 3 honorables? Everyone turned their heads to look who was speaking and saw a round-faced girl. This young lady who was very good in talking was Zheng E. She was still very young, so most of the people from the other schools didn't recognize her. And am I ignoring the chat? What do you mean? Did you guys ask me any questions? Oh. I don't see a question. Zhuo Langchan replied, The martial art of your master, Dingxian Shitai, is high, and her experience is really out of the ordinary. She's in fact the greatest person among everyone in our 5 mountain sword schools, and I admired her very much. But it's a pity that they were killed in the Shaolin Temple. If she was still alive today, then she would know what is right or wrong in today's gathering. He paused for a time before continuing. That day, when I was discussing the merger with Dingxian, Dingjing, and Dingyu Shitai, I mentioned about this matter already. Actually, it didn't matter if this merger comes to fruition or not. But if the merger actually goes through, then I would have definitely asked Dingxian Shitai to be the leader of the combined schools. At that time, Dingxian Shitai was being humbled and declined, but I would definitely have supported her fully. Later on, for some unknown reason, Dingxian Shitai firmly declined this idea. Ay, what a pity, what a pity. Such a hero unexpectedly passed away when her service here isn't done yet. Her death at the Shaolin Temple really made people sad. He had now mentioned Shaolin Temple twice in his speech, as he implicitly put the responsibility of Dingxian Shitai's death on the Shaolin Temple. He was implying that even though the murderer might not have been someone from the Shaolin school, there were many martial art masters at Shaolin who were capable of killing these two masters. Also, even if the Shaolin school didn't plot the demise of the Shitais, they had let their murderers escape and were negligent in their responsibility to protect the people inside the temple. Oh, definition. Tacitly. Tacitly. Was it in... Let's see. Then this meant that tacitly he was not disputing that he knew of White Malignant Star. Oh shit. Secretly? No. Subtly. It might mean subtly. Oh no. Or obviously. Tacitly not disputing what that he knew of. I think it means like, oh god, it could mean a lot of things. It could mean like implicitly. It could mean subtly. I think it means obviously. Obviously, he was not disputing that he knew. All right. Oh, it means implicitly, in a way that is understood or implied without being directly stated. Tacit knowledge or implicit knowledge. I mentioned implicit, but I don't think that counts. I don't think that counts. I said obviously. Although you can make an argument that it is kind of obvious. All right, I'll take the L for that. Ah, that's one song. That's one karaoke song. We haven't done a singing thing at the end in a while, have we? Alright, good job, Hope. You caught me. Suddenly, someone with a crude voice said, "What Headmaster Zuo said was wrong. That day, Dingxian Shitai told me she actually wanted to choose you to become the headmaster of the 5 mountain sword schools." Zuo Longchan felt really happy. He took a look at that person and saw that that person had a horse face, mouse eyes, and looked very weird. He didn't know who that person was, but since he was wearing a black gown, it indicated that he was from the Hangshan school. Besides him were 5 more people with similar appearances, wearing similar gowns, but Zuo Longchan didn't know that they were the Peach Valley 6 fairies. Even though Zuo Longchan felt exalted, his face stayed calm and collected. Yes, subtly would have worked too. But implicitly was the better definition. Damn. Honorable brother, what's your name? Even though Dingshan Shitai had said that at the time, I still couldn't be compared to her. I would never be able to be as good as her. The person who spoke out before was the Root Fairy. He now loudly replied, "I'm Peachtree Root Fairy. These 5 people are all my brothers." "I have heard of your illustrious name for a long time," Zuo Longchan replied. "Which illustrious name have you heard of me? Did you hear about my powerful martial art or my vast knowledge?" Root Fairy asked. Zuo Longchan thought, "So these 6 idiots were the ones who ripped Changbuyo apart." But thinking that Root Fairy had just supported him, he said, "The 6 of you have powerful martial arts. and vast knowledge. I've heard of both. Trunk Fairy said, There's nothing great about our martial arts, but if the 6 of us teamed up together, we would be better than Chief Zuo by a bit. However, if we're fighting one-on-one, then we lack by a lot. Flower Fairy added, but with regards to knowledge, we're way better than Chief Zuo. Zuo Longchan snorted and replied, Really? I'm not wrong at all. That's what Dingxian Shitai said on that day, Flower Fairy replied. Leaf Fairy said, When Dingxian Shitai, Dingjing Shitai, and Dingye Shitai were chit-chatting inside the convent, they talked about the merger of the 5 mountain sword schools. Dingye Shitai said, It's alright if the 5 mountain schools don't merge, but if we're going to merge, then we must ask Songshan School's Mr. Zuo Longchan to become the headmaster. Do you believe me? Zuo Longchan was secretly feeling very happy. He replied, Dingye Shitai gave me a lot of faith. I don't deserve it. Root Fairy said, Don't be happy yet. Dingye Shitai also said, Among the heroes in the realm, Songshan School's headmaster Zuo is very highly regarded. If he does become the headmaster of the 5 Mountains School, that's really the best choice. But he's very selfish, narrow-minded, and has no tolerance. If he really becomes the headmaster, then my female disciples would certainly suffer under him. Trunk Fairy continued his brother's speech. Dingxian Shitai then said, On the other hand, we have 6 heroes here. Their martial arts are really high, and their knowledge is also vast. They would do well enough to be the headmaster of the 5 Mountains School. Zuo Longchan laughed coldly and said, 6 heroes? Who are they? Flower Fairy replied, Of course, these 6 heroes are the 6 of us. As soon as he said this, the thousands of people on the mountaintop burst into laughter. Even though most of these people didn't know of the Peach Valley 6 fairies, they saw that these 6 brothers looked weird and that their appearances were comical. When they heard that they were praising themselves as heroes and were saying that their martial arts are high and their knowledge is vast, they couldn't hold back their laughter. Branch Fairy said, At that time, when Dingxian Shitai mentioned these words 6 heroes, Dingjing and Dingye Shitai immediately realized that these words were referring to the 6 of us, and they immediately cheered. What did Dingye Shitai say at the time? Brothers, do you remember? Fruit Fairy confidently replied, Of course I remember. At that time, Dingye Shitai said, The knowledge of these Peach Valley 6 fairies, when actually compared to Shaolin Temple's Great Master Feng Zheng, lack only by a bit. Compared to Priest Chong Shu of the Wudang School, their martial arts aren't as good, but within the 5 mountain sword schools, no one can be compared to them. Martial sisters, what do you think? Dingjing Shitai then said, I actually think otherwise. Martial sister Dingxian's martial arts and knowledge aren't below the Peach Valley 6 fairies at all. It's a pity that we're females and we're also Buddhists, so it'll be inconvenient for us to become the headmaster of the 5 Mountains School and lead the thousands of heroes, so we should choose the Peach Valley 6 fairies for this position. Okay. Obviously they're lying, right? They're not telling the truth. Leaf Fairy continued with the story. Dingxian Shitai nodded her head and then she said, If the 5 mountain sword schools are really going to merge, then and these 6 brothers aren't the headmasters, then it would be hard for the school to flourish and prosper. As Ling Huchong listened on, he found it becoming funnier and funnier as he came to understand that the Peach Valley 6 fairies were deliberately trying to cause trouble for Zuo Longchan. Zuo Longchan had fabricated words and tried to pass them off as words said by people who had already passed away, and now the Peach Valley 6 fairies were copying him. This tactic of making use of Zuo Longchan's method to dispute with him was really good, as Zuo Longchan was unable to dispute back. On top of Mount Songshan, besides people from the Songshan school and some outsiders who are under Zuo Longchan's command, there were actually many people who disagreed with the idea of merging the 5 mountains sword schools. Some were highly experienced heroes, such as Abbot Feng Zheng and Priest Chong Shu, who were afraid that Zuo Longchan's ambition would become unchecked and disaster would strike in Jianghu. There were also those who saw Priest Tianmen die miserably and were feeling very angry at Zhuo Langchan. There were also some who believed that after the Five Mountains schools had merged, the reputation of the Five Mountains school would prosper greatly, and that they wouldn't allow their own school to miss out on this. And there was also Ling Huchong and his Hengshan school people who had great hostility towards Zhuo Langchan, believing that Ding Xian Shitai, Ding Jing Shitai, and Ding Yue Shitai were killed by him and were hoping to exact their revenge. When all these people heard the nonsense that the Peach Valley Six Fairies were spouting, some also fabricated similar things, making Zhuo Langchan unable to dispute them back. But for the most part, people were just laughing quietly, while the young ones laughed slightly louder. Suddenly, a rough voice said, "Peach Valley Six weirdos, were there other witnesses around when Ding Xian Shitai said this?" Root Fairy replied, "Many Hangshan school disciples heard it themselves. Miss Zheng, isn't that right?" Zheng quickly held back her laughter and calmly replied, "That's right. Headmaster Zhuo, you said that my master approved of the merger of the 5 schools. Who else heard this? Martial sisters, did any of you hear these words from our honorable master?" More than 100 female disciples answered together, "We've never heard of these words." One of the disciples said loudly, "Most likely, those words were Headmaster Zhuo's own fabrication." There was also a female disciple who said, "Compared to Headmaster Zhuo, my master was more inclined to support the Peach Valley Six Fairies. We've all been following the 3 honorables for many years now. How could we not have known what was in their minds?" Many people burst into laughter. Branch Fairy loudly added, "That's right, we're not telling lies, isn't that right?" Later on, Ding Xian Shitai also said, "When the 5 schools do merge, then there's only one position of headmaster, while the Peach Valley Six Fairies have 6 people. Who do you think will be the best one to take on this position?" Brothers, what was Ding Jing Shutai's answer? Flower Fairy replied, Ding Jing Shitai said, "Even when the 5 sword schools merge into one, the mountains of Taishan, Hangshan, Huashan, Hangshan, and Songshan are on the east, south, west, north, and in the middle, respectively, and they can't be physically merged into one. Zhuo Langchan is also not an emperor. How could he move all these mountains together and make it one? So we'll just ask 5 of the Peach Valley Six Fairies to take care of each of the mountains, and have the remaining one be the headmaster." Peach Tree Leaf Fairy said, "That's right." Ding Yi Shitai then said, "Martial sister is right. The parents of the Peach Valley Six Fairies had really good foresight. They knew that Zhuo Langchan wanted to merge the 5 mountain school sometime in the future, so they gave birth to 6 brothers, not 5 or 7. Really admirable, admirable." Okay, so they're saying their parents gave birth to 6 kids just so they can be the leaders of this new merged school. When the crowd heard this, their laughter was so loud that it reverberated through the whole mountain. Zhuo Langchan had prepared this place of worship for the merger of the 5 schools. He had originally set the place up in all its grandeur, so that all the attending heroes would be awed by it. But he never expected that these 6 idiots would come out and start telling jokes in front of everyone, making this grand ceremony look like a comical play. Zhuo Langchan was actually furious, but since he was the host at Mount Songshan, he couldn't just do whatever he wished, and was forced to hold his anger in check. He secretly hatched a plan. "Once this matter is finished, if I don't kill these 6 idiots, then I'm not Zhuo." Man, he wants to kill people just because they embarrassed him. Fruit Fairy suddenly wept loudly and started calling out, This is not good, not good. Ever since the 6 of us were born, we've never been more than a foot apart from each other. One is to be the headmaster of the 5 mountain school, while the others are going to live separately on 5 other mountains. This won't do. We can't do that. He was crying genuinely, as if the headmaster position of the 5 mountain school had been decided, and that the 6 of them were faced with the situation of parting ways together. Branch Fairy said, "Sixth brother, don't be upset. The 6 of us won't be separated. Brothers, don't give up. I also won't give up. But since people expect us to become the headmaster of the Five Mountains School, we're left with no choice but to go against the merger of the 5 schools." Root Fairy and the other 4 brothers replied together, Right. Why do we need to merge the 5 schools?" Fruit Fairy snorted his nose and broke into a smile. He said, "Even if the schools are really merging, there's a great hero in the Five Mountains School. Compared to the 6 of us, his knowledge is higher, his martial art is more powerful, and just like the 6 of us, he has the favor of everyone. It's not too late for this kind of person to become the headmaster." Zhuo Longchan was worried that these 6 chaps would continue with their pestering and make more and more trouble, so he quickly cut them off and immediately said clearly, 6 heroes. Are you the headmaster of Hongshan School, or is it somewhere else? Are the 6 heroes taking responsibility for the Hongshan School's matters? Branch Fairy replied, "We originally wanted to become the headmaster of the Hongshan School, but thinking that the headmaster of the Songshan School is you, old brother Zuo, then when the 6 of us become the headmaster of Hongshan, then we would be on par with you. Hey, that. Flower Fairy said, "If we're on par with him, then the 6 of us heroes would definitely lose our position. That's why we asked Ling Huchang to take on this difficult job and become the headmaster of the Hongshan School." Zhuo Longchan was seething with rage, and he said coldly, "Headmaster Ling Hu, you're now leading the Hongshan School family. But you're not restricting the people in your noble school, but allowed them to spout nonsense in front of the entire realm's heroes and shame themselves." Ling Huchang smiled. "These 6 Peachtree brothers are honest and sincere, and they speak candidly, but they're not the kind of people who blindly invent rumors. Their story of Dingxian Shitai is more reliable when compared to the nonsense from someone outside this school." Zhuo Longchan snorted and said, "Today, on this matter of the Five Mountains Sword School's merger, your noble school is thinking of objecting to it, all by yourself?" Ling Huchang shook his head. "Hongshan School is not objecting to it by ourselves. Huashan School's headmaster, Mr. Yue, is the respected master who initially taught me my skills. Today, even though I belong to another school, I wouldn't dare to forget the instructions from my former respected master." Zhuo Longchan replied, "The way you said that, you'll still listen to what Huashan School's Mr. Yue has to say." "That's right. My Hongshan School and the Huashan School are uniting our effort and working together," Ling Huchang replied. Zhuo Longchan turned his head to look at the Huashan School. He then said, "Mr. Yue, Headmaster Ling Hu didn't forget your past kindness to him. Congratulations. Headmaster Ling Hu will follow your lead, whether you agree to the merger or not. But what do you think of this merger?" Yue Buchen replied, "Oh great, what is he gonna say?" "Since Chief Zhuo asked me earlier, I've already considered about this matter in great detail, but it's actually not easy to reach a decision." At that moment, everyone in the crowd turned their eyes to look at him. Many of the people in the crowd thought, Hongshan School is weak to stand by itself, and Taishan School has divisions. So both of them were unable to resist the Songshan School. At this time, the Huashan School and the Hongshan School have become allies, and adding the Hongshan School to the mix, they can definitely go up against Songshan. They then heard Yue Buchun continue, "My Huashan School was founded more than 200 years ago. Some time ago, our school suffered a schism and divided into the Qi branch and the Sword branch. All the seniors in Wulin already know about this. When I think of the days when the two branches were killing each other, I still tremble with fear. Ling Huchang pondered. Master once mentioned that the struggle between these two branches was the school's biggest shame and cannot be mentioned to the people outside. Why is he now publicly discussing about this matter in front of all the realm's heroes? He then heard Yue Buchun's sharp voice traveling over many li, and each word that he said echoed back from distant places. Ling Huchang thought, Master's cultivation of the divine art of Violet Twilight has gotten even higher. His voice and the way he uses his inner energy seems quite different than the past. Yue Buchun continued, That's why I deeply feel that being apart is not as good as being together for all the sects in Wulin. Hundreds of years ago, the fightings were very fierce in Jianghu, and no one knows just how many people from the orthodox path died from such fights. Tracing the source of this, it's most likely that the fighting occurred because there were too many sects in Jianghu. I've always believed that if all the sects in Wulin are to become one, then everyone will be like brothers, and all those kinds of killings would be greatly reduced. Then many heroes would not lose their lives while they're still in their prime, and the numbers of orphans and widows would also be greatly reduced. He said this with a voice full of pity towards the fate of mankind, and many people couldn't help but nod their heads when they heard this. There were some people who whispered, Huashan's Yue Buchun is called Gentleman's Sword. He's really earned his reputation. His heart is full of compassion. Abbot Fangzheng joined his two palms and said, Very good, very good. Scholar Yue is very compassionate. If everyone in Wulin thought the same way as Scholar Yue, then all the bloodshed and killings in Wulin will disappear completely. Yue Buchun said, The great master is overpraising me. That was just my shallow view of things. Shaolin temples' revered monks from generations past must have thought of the same thing a long time ago. It's evidence of Shaolin temples' prestigious status in Wulin that with just one call, all the wise and outstanding warriors from every school and sect responds to it. This must be because of the Shaolin temples' achievements for the last hundreds of years. It's true that each school and each sect's martial art has different roots, and that their methods of inner energy cultivation are very different from each other. So, if we actually want every pugilist out there to be under one school, then that would be easier said than done. A gentleman is friendly, but not at the expense of principle. Just so, our martial arts can be different, but we must still be at peace with one another. Even until today, there are still a lot of sects and schools in Jianghu which are clearly fighting in the open or are fighting in secret, and countless lives are lost because of this. All these deaths and killings just because of some senseless fights. All the wise heroes, he's very long-winded, all the wise heroes from years past must have known that all these divisions in sects and schools are causing a lot of harm in Jianghu. But why can't we resolve all these heartaches and eliminate this division? I really don't understand this. So, I've been thinking about this matter for many years now, and it was only recently that I've suddenly become enlightened and understood the key point that's been hindering this from happening. This matter affects the life and death of everyone in Wulin from the orthodox path, so I wouldn't dare to keep this matter to myself. That's why I've cautiously raised the issue and asked everyone here to give me some advice. The crowd, one by one, shouted, Please say it, please say it. Mr. Yue's opinion is definitely wise. So what's the reason behind this? Eliminating all the division between sects and schools is impossible. Yue Buchun waited until the crowd calmed down before saying, I thought about this and felt that one of the reasons is the difference between the word hurried and gradual. Throughout the times, the compassionate people in Wulin have always hoped to remove the division between the sects, and they have often done this in a hurry. They've always tried to remove these boundaries between sects and eliminate the division in one fell swoop, but they never realize how difficult it is to do. All the sects in Wulin, the big ones, all the sects in Wulin, the big ones, number in the tens, and the small ones number in the thousands. And every single sect has its tradition in the tens or even thousands of years of history. If they actually wanted to eliminate all these divisions in one fell swoop, then of course it's going to be impossible. Zhuo Langchan said, "So, according to Mr. Yue's opinion, if we want to eliminate the division between sects, then it can never be done? Wouldn't that be crushing everyone's hope?" Ye Buchun shook his head. "Even though it's very difficult to do, it's actually still possible to do. I said before about the difference, hurried and gradual. As the saying goes, you botch it by rushing it. We must change our principle, and the people from the orthodox path must also cooperate to go forward. If we do it in 50 years or 100 years, we'll definitely succeed." Zhuo Longchan sighed before saying, 50 years, 100 years, most of the heroes here would have turned into bones by then. Yue Buchun replied, "We must do our best on this matter, and we don't have to worry about whether we'll be able to actually complete this matter in our own generation or not. This is the same like planting trees for the later generations. We plant the trees and let the future generations enjoy some peace and calm. How can this not be a good idea? Also, 50 or 100 years is the time that it would take to completely accomplish this. But if you actually want to see some slight accomplishments, then 8 to 10 years will be sufficient to see what have been achieved." Zhuo Langchan said, 8 to 10 years to see a slight improvement. That's very good then. But how do we first start on this? Yue Buchun smiled slightly and continued, "Actually, what Chief Zhuo is doing right now is to the benefit of the orthodox path in Jianghu. We should first eliminate this view of many sects and schools in Wulin, as it achieves nothing. First, we should get the sects and schools which are relatively near to each other, have similar martial arts, and are friendly to each to first combine as much as they can. Then, within 8 to 10 years, the number of sects and schools would have been greatly reduced. Our 5 mountain sword schools should first combine to make the 5 mountain school to set up an example for the other sects. This would be a glorious achievement that would be praised throughout Jianghu for years to come." Alright, give me 5 minutes. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. Okay, so it looks like his master, Yue Buchun, took a long time to say that he approves of the merger. He's very long-winded. When he finished saying this, the crowd started to call out, "So, Huashan School approves of the merger." Ling Huchang was greatly startled, and he thought, "I never expected that Master would actually approve of the merger. Since I've already said that my Hongshan School will follow the Huashan School's lead, then I can't eat my words now and not go forward with the merger." He was feeling anxious and took a look towards Great Master Feng Zheng and Priest Cheng Xu, They both were shaking their heads and were looking quite depressed. Remember, the plan was for him to either stop this merger or become the headmaster. Become the master of the United Five Mountains School. Zhuo Langchan had always been worried that Yue Buchun would object. This person was good at debating. His reputation in Jianghu was also very good, and it was hard to force him into doing something. He had never expected that Yue Buchun would unexpectedly support the merger. He never expected that he would unexpectedly support the merger. He was elated, and he said, Songshan School approves of the merger. Wait, who's saying that? Oh. Songshan School approves of the merger. My reason for the merger before was originally unity of will is an impregnable stronghold. Together we're strong and alone we're weak. But after hearing Mr. Yue's reason, my view has now been broadened, and I realize that this merger concerns the future of Wulin and will benefit more than just our 5 schools. Yue Buchun replied, after our 5 schools merged, if we want to actually extend our influence, then we'll definitely be in competition with the heroes from the other sects. When this happens, not only would it result in problems throughout Wulin, it would also be very unbeneficial to our 5 Mountains School. Thus, the merger would also be more disadvantageous than beneficial to all the heroes in Wulin. That's why the objective of this merger must be to stop the fighting and to resolve the disputes. That way, after the merger of our 5 schools, no sect would be disadvantaged, and everyone need not have any worries. When the crowd heard him, there were some who breathed a sigh of relief, and there were also some who were still half doubting what he said. Zhuo Langchan said, in that case, the Huashan School approves of the merger. That's right, Yue Buchun answered. He paused for a while before looking at Ling Hucheng. Hangshan School's headmaster Ling Hu was previously in the Huashan School, so he and I have more than 20 years of master-disciple relationship. After he went out of the Huashan School, I didn't abandon him and have never forgotten our relationship. I've always hoped that we could be together again under one school. Today I've already promised him that we will again be in the same school. He said till here when he revealed his smile. That's true. When the schools merge, they will be both in the same school. Ling Hucheng was shaken and he immediately understood. Ling Hucheng thought, he promised me that I'll be able to return to his school, but he didn't actually mean to return to Huashan. He actually meant that after the 5 schools have merged, then Master Wife, and I would again be under one school. That's also very good. His thought continued. Master just said how the merger of the 5 schools must be with the aim to stop the fightings and to resolve the disputes. If that's true, then the merger of the 5 schools is a good thing, and not a bad thing at all. Looking ahead, it seems that the future of the 5 Mountains School is still undecided, whether its aim is going to be what Master has said, or what Zhuo Langchan has envisioned. If Huashan and Hangshan School ally together, and if we add Hangshan School, as well as some of the priests from the Taishan School, to our alliance, then our 3.5 schools would be able to withstand the Songshan School and half of the Taishan School. Only then would we be able to win. Ling Hucheng still had this disquieting thought inside his heart when he heard Zhuo Langchan say, Congratulations, Mr. Yue and Headmaster Ling Hu. From today onwards, both of you are again under one school. This is a really happy event. From among the crowd, hundreds of them started to applaud this. Suddenly, Peachtree Branch Fairy loudly said, This is inappropriate. Really inappropriate. Really, really inappropriate. Trunk Fairy asked, why is it inappropriate? Branch Fairy answered, the headmaster position of the Hangshan school should have belonged to us brothers, isn't that right? Trunk Fairy and the other 4 brothers answered together, yes. Branch Fairy said, but we were polite, so we let Ling Huchong do it, isn't that right? But when we gave Ling Huchong this position, there was a clause for him to take revenge for Ding Xian, Ding Jing, and Ding Ye Shetai. Isn't this right? When he asked this, his other 5 brothers replied together, yes. Branch Fairy said, but what if the people who killed all the 3 Shetai were inside the 5 mountain sword schools? According to my opinion, if it's not that person's surname Zhuo, then it's that person's surname Yo. Or maybe if it's not left or right, then it's that person's surname Zhong. If Ling Huchong joined the 5 mountain schools, then he would become martial brother with this person surnamed Zhuo or Yo or Zhong. Then how is he going to take revenge for Ding Xian Shetai? The other Peach Valley 5 fairies answered, what you said isn't wrong at all. Zhu Longshan was furious, and he thought, you 6 chaps have insulted me. Now you'll only live for a few more hours. After that, none of you would be able to spout your nonsense anymore. He then heard Peach Tree Root Fairy say, if Ling Huchong isn't going to take revenge for Ding Xian Shetai, then he can't be the headmaster of the Hangshan school anymore. Isn't this right? If he's not the headmaster of the Hangshan school, then he can't make the decision for the Hangshan school. Isn't this right? And if he can't make the decision, then whether Hangshan school joins the 5 mountains school or not isn't Ling Huchong's decision to make. Isn't this right? As he asked each question, the other Peach Valley 5 fairies answered each question with a resounding yes. Trunk Fairy said, a school cannot be without a headmaster. Since Ling Huchong can't be the headmaster of the Hangshan school anymore, we must select a wise person to do it. Isn't this right? In the Hangshan school, there are 6 heroes whose martial arts are powerful, with vast knowledge. At that time, Ding Xian Shetai has already decided, and just then 5 mountain schools' Chief Zhou has also said, the 6 of you have powerful martial arts and vast knowledge. I've heard of your illustrious name for a long time already. Isn't this right? As Trunk Fairy asked each question, his 5 brothers again answered each question together with a yes. The person asking the question was getting louder and louder, while the people answering him were also getting stronger and stronger. The crowd on the mountaintop found this to be really funny, and they were also feeling happy that there were people here causing trouble for the Songshan school. Some were laughing loudly at this, while tens of them were following the Peach Valley 5 fairies in answering yes. After Yue Buchun approved of the merger, Ling Huchong's mind was in chaos. When he heard the Peach Valley 6 fairies spouting nonsense, he really liked it as it seemed that the 6 brothers were trying to get him out of trouble. But after hearing them for some time, he suddenly found it strange. He thought, Peach Valley 6 fairies usually speak in an entangled manner, and what they say usually doesn't connect. But ever since we've arrived at Songshan school, every single sentence they've said always had some deep meaning behind them. Just a moment ago, what they were saying seemed to be for their own benefits, but those words had actually had some hidden meaning behind them, and it's actually very hard to dispute what they were saying. It's really different from their usual way of randomly spouting nonsense. Could it be that there's a wise person who's directing them? He then heard Flower Fairy say, these 6 people in Hangshan School have outstanding martial arts, and their knowledge and experience are just like those of grand heroes. Everyone's here, not a fool, so you must know who these people are. Isn't this right? More than 100 people laughingly answered yes. Flower Fairy said, the world's right and wrong depends on people's opinion, and this depends on the people's heart. May I ask everyone, who are these 6 grand heroes? More than 200 people laughed loudly while they answered, of course, these 6 heroes are the Peach Valley 6 fairies. Root Fairy said, in that case, this headmaster position of the Hangshan school, the 6 of us are forced to take responsibility for it. pushed into taking this difficult job of noble character and high prestige. It is in favor with the public, successful, comes to light, drum the mountain, opens the door. As he talked, the sentence was getting more and more unintelligible, and the crowd was clutching their stomachs, laughing loudly. Songshan school people were now shouting, "What are you 6 chaps rambling about? Quickly, scram down this mountain!" Branch Fairy said, "Strange, your Songshan school was trying everything you could to merge the 5 schools together, but now you unexpectedly want the 6 big heroes of the Hangshan school to go down the mountain? Once the 6 of us are gone, then the rest of the Hangshan school's little heroes and female heroes will of course follow us down the mountain, and this merger of the 5 mountain sword schools would fail. Great! Hangshan school, let's go down the mountain and let their 4 schools merge together. Zhuo Langshan loves to become the headmaster of the 4 schools. We'll just let him do it. We, the Hangshan school, won't join this celebration." Yihu, Yiqing, and the rest of the female disciples hated Zhuo Langshan deeply. When they heard the Peach Valley 6 fairies say this, they immediately shouted, "Let's go!" When Zhuo Langshan heard this, he was worried. He said to Ling Huchang, "Headmaster Ling Hu, we're martial artists, and our words are like gold. You already said that you'll follow Mr. Yue's lead in this, so should we disregard what you said?" Ling Huchang lifted his head and took a look at Yue Buchun. Yue Buchun's face was looking intense, and he was continuously nodding his head. Ling Huchang turned his head and looked at Great Master Feng Zheng and Priest Chong Shu. He saw they were continuously shaking their heads, seeing that he had not done what he was supposed to do. Suddenly, he heard Yue Buchun say, "Chonger, you and I are like father and son, and your master wife is waiting for you. Could it be that you don't want to be together with us, to be like we were before?" When Ling Huchang heard this, wow, he's very manipulative. When Ling Huchang heard this, tears suddenly filled his eyes. Without thinking anymore, he loudly said, Master wife, son actually hopes for this. Since you support the merger of the 5 schools, then I don't dare to disobey you." He paused for a time before continuing. "But the deep enmity of the 3 Shitai..." Yue Buchun loudly said, "Hangshan schools is Dingxian, Dingjing, and Dingye Shitai are the unfortunate victims of a plot, and everyone from the orthodox path regrets this deeply. From today onwards, after the merger of the 5 schools, Hangshan schools' matter is also my business. Right now, the most important thing to do is investigate this matter clearly. Then, with the might of our 5 schools, and with the assistance of everyone from the orthodox path, we'll make mincemeat out of this murderer. Chonger, you don't need to be anxious. This murderer is our 5 mountains schools' most hated enemy, and we would never let him go." The way he said all this was full of righteousness and without any doubt. Hangshan schools' female disciples cheered loudly. Yihu loudly called out, "Mr. Yue is right. If your honorable is able to preside over this and avenge our 3 honorables, then everyone from Hangshan will be deeply grateful to you." Yeah, Yue Buchun is very manipulative. Indeed. Yue Buchun said, "I'll take responsibility for this matter. Within 3 years, if I can't avenge the 3 Shitai, then everyone from the orthodox path can say that I'm a shameless and despicable lowlife." After he said this, Hangshan School's female disciples cheered loudly. Ling Huchang thought, even though I'm determined to avenge the 3 Shitai, I still wouldn't be able to put a time limit to my effort. Everyone suspects that Zhuo Langshan is the murderer, but how do we get proof of it? Even if we pressed him for an answer, he would never admit it. How can Master be so certain? He must have known who the murderer is, and he must also have the evidence to back this up, to be able to do this within 3 years. He had previously agreed to accompany Yue Buchun in approving of the merger, but he was afraid that the Hangshan School's disciples would not be willing to go with this decision. But when he saw them cheering loudly, and not a single one of them raised their objection, he felt relieved. In a loud voice, he said, "That's fabulous. My master, Mr. Yue, has already said that the most important thing is to investigate clearly who has killed the 3 Shitai, and that this person is the most hated enemy of the 5 Mountains School, and would never be let go. Headmaster Zuo, you approve of this?" Zuo Langchan coldly said, "These words are right. Why would I disapprove of it?" "All the heroes here today have already heard. The most important thing is to investigate clearly who killed the 3 Shitai, no matter if he's the killer, or if he's the person pulling the string, or even if he's a highly respected senior. Every single person must be executed," Ling Hucheng announced. When the crowd heard this, half of them cheered. Zuo Langchan waited for them to quiet down before he said, "East Mountain Taishan, South Mountain Hangshan, West Mountain Huashan, North Mountain Hangshan, and the Middle Mountain Songshan have unanimously approved of the merger. From now on, the names of our 5 mountain sword schools will no longer be mentioned in Wulin, and all of the 5 schools' disciples are now the new disciples of the 5 Mountains School." He waved his left hand, and firecrackers started to go off from everywhere around the mountaintop, celebrating the formal opening of the 5 Mountains School. Alright, looks like it's done. The merger has happened, right? So now the 5 schools have been united into one. The crowd was smiling and was amusedly looking around at each other. They all thought Zuo Langchan has prepared everything so carefully for the merger of the 5 mountain sword schools. If the merger had actually failed today, it seems likely this Songshan mountaintop may have turned into a killing field and be flooded with blood. The mountaintop was overflowing with smoke. Paper fillings were flying everywhere. The sound of the firecrackers was getting louder and louder, and no one was able to say anything. After a very long time, the firecrackers finally stopped. This was followed by a number of people going up to Zuo Langchan to congratulate him. It seemed that these people were the ones invited by the Songshan school to assist them, or maybe they were the people who wanted to flatter Zuo Langchan after seeing him succeed. Zuo Langchan was humble in receiving their congratulations, and even his ice-cold face revealed a smile or two. Oh, new school opening. Hey, do we have a sound effect for this? I don't know. Maybe this one? That's Zuo Langchan. How about this? That's the death toll of the old schools, and that's the bell for the new school, okay? Suddenly, Root Fairy said, "Since the 5 mountain sword schools have already merged into 5 mountains school, then we'll allow nature to take its course. This is called knowing when to let things be." Zuo Langchan thought, "Ever since you 6 weirdos have been on this mountaintop, these were the first words you said that resemble what normal people say." Trunk Fairy said, "Each of the schools has its own headmaster. Who do you think is best to be the 5 mountain schools' headmaster? If everyone unanimously elects the Peach Valley 6 fairies, then we'll be forced to take on the responsibility." Branch Fairy said, "Just then, Mr. Yue said the merger of the 5 schools is to the benefit of Wulin, and not for personal ambition. Since it's like that, even though this position has a big responsibility and requires a lot of work, the 6 of us will take on this difficult job." Leaf Fairy let out a long sigh. Then he said, Since everyone is so enthusiastic, how can we 6 brothers just sit on the side and be spectators, and not lend our strengths to the orthodox path in Jianghu? These 6 brothers were talking as if they had been elected to lead the Five Mountains School. A tall old man from the Songshan School said loudly, "Who elected you to be the headmaster of the Five Mountains School? That's just crazy talk." This person was Zhuo Longchan's martial brother, Tower Holding Palm, Ding Mian. At this time, people from the Songshan School started to make some noise. One person said, "If today isn't a great celebration for the 5 schools' merger, we would have chopped all your legs off." Ding Mian added, "Headmaster Ling Hu, you don't care that these 6 crazy people are making a disturbance here?" Flower Fairy loudly said, "You're calling Ling Hu Chong Headmaster Ling Hu. You're electing him as the Five Mountains School headmaster?" Just then, Zhuo Longchan said that there's no more Hangshan School or Huashan School in Wulin. Since you called him Headmaster Ling Hu, that means you recognize him as the headmaster of the Five Mountains School. Fruit Fairy said, "When compared to us, Ling Hu Chong isn't as good as us, but since you want Ling Hu Chong to become the Five Mountain Schools' headmaster, then you'll have to settle for second best then, and we just have to put up with it." Root Fairy raised his voice and called out, "Songshan School nominates Ling Hu Chong to be the Five Mountain Schools headmaster. What does everyone think of this?" This was followed by the tender-voiced cheers of more than 100 females. Of course, they were all the female disciples of the Hangshan School. Ding Mian was the one who called out Headmaster Ling Hu and gave the Peach Valley 6 fairies this topic. He couldn't help feeling embarrassed, and his face was blushing furiously, not knowing what to say. "I'm not nominating Ling Hu Chong to be..." What? No, I didn't. I didn't mean it that way. I'm not nominating Ling Hu Chong to be the Five Mountain Schools' headmaster." Trunk Fairy cut him off. "You're saying you don't want Ling Hu Chong to be the Five Mountain Schools' headmaster because you don't want to lose the Peach Valley 6 fairies. Since you love us so much, it would be impolite for us 6 brothers to refuse. We have to shamefully take on this position then." Branch Fairy said, "How about this? There's no harm for us to take the position for 1.5 years while we wait for things to settle. Then we'll step down and give this position to a better person. There's no harm in doing that." His 5 brothers answered together, Right. This is called taking the middle road." Zhuo Longchan coldly said, "The 6 of you really talk a lot here, as if all the world's heroes here are nothing. Why can't you allow other people to say a few words?" Flower Fairy replied, We can. Why not? If you want to talk, please talk. If you want to fart, then please fart." When he said these words, "If you want to fart, then please fart," everyone around the place of worship suddenly became quiet, because if anyone said anything, they could be considered farting. After some time, Zhuo Longchan said again, "Heroes, please tell us your opinions. Ignore the nonsense those 6 crazy people were spouting." The Peach Valley 6 fairies took a breath together and snorted a few times. Then they said, "Someone's farting. It smells really bad." A thin old man from the Songshan School group said loudly, "5 mountain sword schools have the same root, different branches. We've been allied together, and for the last few years, Headmaster Zul has been our chief. Headmaster Zul has been leading the 5 schools for a long time now, and has increased the prestige of the schools. So, naturally, Chief Zul is our 5 mountain schools' headmaster. Who else can take on this position?" This person participated in Liu Zhengfeng's gold basin hand-washing ceremony in Hangshan, so many people recognized him as Liu Bai. Ding Mian, Liu Bai, and Fei Bin killed Liu Fengcheng's whole family. They were really cruel and merciless. Is Ling Hu Chong being named headmaster of the new school? No. The fairies are arguing for him to become headmaster, and now they're arguing for themselves to become the headmaster. Flower Fairy said, "Wrong, wrong. We must elect a new headmaster for the Five Mountains School. This position of headmaster, we must get rid of the old and exchange it with the new." Fruit Fairy said, "That's right. If Zhuo Langchan becomes the headmaster again, then that's like changing the form but not the content, and there wouldn't be an atmosphere of newness. Why would you merge the 5 schools then?" French Fairy said, "Everyone can become the headmaster of the Five Mountain School, but Zhuo Langchan cannot." Trunk Fairy said, "According to my esteemed opinion, we should get everyone to take turns doing the job. A person can be headmaster for a day, so I'll do it for today, then you'll do it tomorrow. Everyone will share it and gets their turn. This is a really fair method, and no one can take advantage of it. This is really good business, and everyone's happy." Root Fairy applauded, and he said, "This method is really clever. So we should get the youngest young lady to do it first. I elect Hangshan School's little sister Qin Chuan to be today's headmaster of the Five Mountains School." Hangshan School's female disciples knew that the Peach Valley Six Fairies statement was to make trouble for Zhuo Langchan, so they all cheered. For more than 1,000 people here, this matter had nothing to do with them, so they also followed in cheering. In a moment, the Songshan mountaintop was again in chaos. And that's it. Done. Another chapter done. We're getting towards the end now, boys and girls. All right. So did you guys like the chapter? I think the MVPs here are the Peach Valley Six Fairies. Like, they're talking a lot of sense, and they're really annoying. They're really pissing off Zhuo Langchan.